Hey Reddit, I need to get something off my chest, and I could really use some advice. My name's Jason, and I'm a 37-year-old guy living in suburban New Jersey, with my wife Emily, who's 35. We've been married for 12 years and have 2 kids, our son Josh, who's 10, and our daughter Lily, who's 7. From the outside, we seem like the perfect family. Nice house, stable jobs, and kids who are thriving. But lately things have felt off, and I'm beginning to think that the life I thought I had is slipping through my fingers. Emily and I met in college and hit it off immediately. We shared the same sense of humor, interests, and dreams for the future. She was my best friend, and marrying her felt like the most natural thing in the world. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but we've always managed to work through them. Or at least that's what I thought. A few months ago, I started to notice small changes in Emily's behavior. She became more distant, spending a lot of time on her phone, and her work schedule suddenly became erratic with late nights and weekend meetings. At first, I didn't think much of it. Her job as a marketing manager can be demanding, and I trusted her completely. But as time went on, the nagging feeling in the back of my mind grew stronger. I brushed off my suspicions, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. After all, we'd been through so much together, and she'd never given me a reason to doubt her before. But the signs became harder to ignore. The hushed phone conversations, the way she started dressing up more for work, and the fact that our once vibrant sex life had dwindled to almost nothing. I found myself staying up late, going over every interaction in my head, trying to figure out where things went wrong. One night, after she'd gone to bed, I did something I never thought I'd do. I snooped through her phone. I know it was a breach of trust, but I was desperate for answers. What I found shattered my world. There were messages from a guy named Brian, someone I'd never heard her mention before. The messages weren't overtly sexual, but they were definitely flirtatious. Lots of "I miss you" and "can't wait to see you again" texts. My heart sank. This wasn't just a work colleague, this was something more. I confronted Emily the next day, and she brushed it off as just a friend from work saying I was overreacting. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't shake it. I started paying closer attention, looking for any clue that might confirm my worst fears. And as much as I wanted to believe they were professional enough, discussing projects and deadlines, but there was a familiarity to their tone that set off alarm bells. It was clear they were more than just colleagues. Things took a turn for the worse when I stumbled upon a receipt for a hotel stay. It was dated for a night she claimed to have been working late. My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of it. The evidence was mounting, but I still had no concrete proof of an affair. I felt like I was living in a bad dream, caught between denial and the harsh reality of what was unfolding. My suspicion began to affect our home life. I became withdrawn, spending more time at work just to avoid the tension at home. Emily noticed, of course. She started asking if everything was okay, if there was something bothering me. Her concern felt like a cruel joke. How could I tell her what was really going on in my mind? One evening I decided to confront her again. We were sitting in the living room, the kids were in bed, and the house was quiet. I took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. "Emily, we need to talk." She put down her phone and gave me a wary look. "What's wrong, Jason? I can't keep pretending that everything is fine. I found the hotel receipt, Emily. Why were you there?" Her face went pale and she looked away, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "It was for work," she said quietly. "Brian and I had to meet a client there." I shook my head, feeling the frustration and hurt bubbling up inside me. "Do you really expect me to believe that? You've been lying to me, Emily. I know there's more to it than just work." She sighed deeply, tears welling up in her eyes. "Jason, I don't know what to say." "Yes. I've been spending a lot of time with Brian, but it's not what you think. I was lonely, and he was there. We talked a lot, but it never went beyond that." I swear. I wanted to believe her, but the trust had been shattered. "How can I believe you, Emily? You've been hiding things from me, lying about where you were." How do I know this isn't just another lie? The conversation spiraled into a heated argument, with both of us saying things we probably didn't mean. She accused me of being paranoid and controlling, while I accused her of betraying our marriage. By the end of it, we were both exhausted, emotionally drained, and no closer to the truth. That night, I slept in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and wondering how things had gone so wrong. I felt like I was losing everything I held dear, and I had no idea how to fix it. All I knew was that I needed to get to the bottom of this, one way or another. The uncertainty was tearing me apart, and I couldn't live like this any longer. The tension between Emily and me grew unbearable after our argument. We were like two strangers living under the same roof, only speaking when necessary and avoiding each other's eyes. The kids picked up on the tension too, asking why Mommy and Daddy were so quiet. It broke my heart, but I didn't have any answers for them. One evening, while Emily was out working late again, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands. I called my friend Paul, someone I could trust, and who had been through a rough patch in his own marriage a few years back. He listened patiently as I poured out my suspicions and fears, and then he suggested something I hadn't considered before. "Jason, if you really want to know the truth, hire a private investigator," Paul said. "It's not the most pleasant route, but it'll give you the answers you need." I hesitated at first. It felt so drastic, so invasive. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I needed the truth, no matter how painful. I couldn't continue living in this limbo, questioning everything and driving myself mad with doubt. The next day, I contacted a local PI named Sam. We met at a small cafe, and I laid out everything I knew and suspected. Sam was professional and understanding, assuring me that he'd get to the bottom of it. He asked for a recent photo of Emily and any details about her usual hangouts and work schedule. Reluctantly, I handed over the information, feeling a pang of guilt. Over the next week, Sam kept me updated with his progress. He followed Emily, discreetly taking photos and documenting her activities. Every day I dreaded his calls, afraid of what he might have discovered. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sam called and asked to meet in person. We met at the same cafe, and Sam laid out the evidence on the table. Photos of Emily with Brian, not just at work but at restaurants, a park, and yes, the same hotel from the receipt. The photos told a story that I didn't want to believe. Them holding hands, laughing together, and in one particularly damning photo, kissing passionately. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. The evidence was irrefutable. Emily was having an affair. My hands shook as I looked through the photos, and I had to fight back tears. Sam offered some words of comfort, but they felt hollow. I thanked him, paid him for his services, and left, feeling like I was walking through a fog. That evening, I waited for Emily to come home, my heart pounding in my chest. When she finally walked through the door, I could barely look at her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. She looked wary, but followed me into the living room. I laid the photos out on the coffee table, one by one, and watched as her face went from confusion to shock to horror. "Jason, I can explain," she stammered, but I held up my hand. "Don't. Just don't," I said, my voice breaking. "I hired a private investigator, Emily. I have all the proof I need. Just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on?" She broke down, tears streaming down her face. "About 6 months," she admitted. "It started as just talking, but it escalated. I'm so sorry, Jason. I never meant for it to go this far." Her words cut through me like a knife. 6 months. Half a year of lies and betrayal. "Why, Emily? Why would you do this to us, to our family?" She sobbed harder, unable to look me in the eye. "I don't know. I felt lonely, disconnected. You were always busy with work and the kids. Brian was there, and it just happened. But I never stopped loving you, Jason. I swear." Her words felt like a twisted joke. "Love? You call this love? You destroyed our marriage, our trust. How could you?" We argued for what felt like hours. Voices raised, emotions raw. She begged for forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. But I couldn't see past the betrayal. I felt shattered, like everything we had built together was crumbling before my eyes. That night, I packed a bag and left the house. I needed space, time to think. I checked into a motel, the irony of staying in a place similar to where she'd met Brian not lost on me. As I lay on the stiff bed, staring at the ceiling, I wondered how we could ever come back from this. The woman I thought I knew had become a stranger, and the life I thought I had was nothing but a lie. I spent the next few days in a haze of anger and sorrow, trying to process the betrayal. I couldn't bring myself to go back home, so I stayed at the motel, nursing my wounded pride and shattered heart. Emily called and texted repeatedly, but I ignored her. I needed time to think, to figure out what my next steps would be. Eventually, I knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation forever. I had to go home, not just for Emily, but for Josh and Lily. They deserved to know what was going on, and I needed to be there for them. With a heavy heart, I drove back to our house, unsure of what I would find or what I would say. When I walked through the door, Emily was waiting for me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Jason, please, can we talk?" she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. "We need to do this, Emily. We can keep pretending everything's fine." We sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared countless meals and moments together. The weight of what had happened hung heavy in the air, and I struggled to find the right words. "Why, Emily?" I began, my voice shaking. "Why did you do it? Was I not enough for you?" She looked down, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't about you, Jason. It was about me. I felt lost, disconnected. Brian was there, and I made a terrible mistake. I wish I could take it all back." Her words cut deep, but I knew we had to get to the bottom of this if we had any chance of moving forward. "Do you love him?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. She shook her head vehemently. "No, Jason, I don't love him. I never did. It was just an escape, a way to feel something when I felt numb inside." Her confession didn't make the pain any less, but it gave me a glimmer of understanding. "And what about us? Do you still love me?" She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "I love you, Jason. I never stopped loving you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you to give me a chance to make things right." I pulled my hand away, the anger bubbling up again. "How can I trust you, Emily? You've been lying to me for months. You destroyed everything we built together. How can we ever come back from this?" she sobbed, her shoulders shaking. "I don't know, Jason, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything. I just want a chance to fix this, to prove to you that I can be the wife you deserve." Her desperation was palpable, but so was my hurt. "We can't just sweep this under the rug, Emily. This isn't something that can be fixed overnight." "I know," she whispered, "but I'm willing to fight for us, for our family. Please, Jason, don't give up on us." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. "I'll stay for the kids, but things can't go back to the way they were. We need time, and we need help." "If you're serious about making this work, we have to go to counseling." She nodded, her eyes filled with hope and regret. "I'll do whatever it takes, Jason. I promise." The days that followed were filled with tense conversations and awkward silences. We told Josh and Lily that Mommy and Daddy were going through a tough time, but assured them that we both loved them very much. It broke my heart to see the confusion and worry in their eyes, but I knew they deserved the truth, even if it was a watered-down version. We started seeing a marriage counselor, a stern but kind woman named Dr. Stevens. She didn't sugarcoat things, and her straightforward approach was exactly what we needed. The sessions were painful, forcing us to confront the issues that had led to Emily's affair and the cracks in our relationship that we had ignored for too long. Emily opened up about her feelings of loneliness and isolation, and I realized that I had been so focused on providing for our family that I had neglected the emotional connection we once had. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me understand her better. For my part, I admitted to my own shortcomings, my workaholic tendencies, my lack of attention to her needs. It was a bitter pill to swallow, acknowledging that I had played a role in the unraveling of our marriage. The counseling sessions were grueling, but they also brought moments of clarity and connection. Slowly, we began to rebuild, not just our marriage, but our trust in each other. Emily cut off all contact with Brian, changing her phone number and blocking him on every platform. It was a small step, but it showed me that she was committed to making things right. One evening, after a particularly emotional session, we sat on the porch, watching the kids play in the yard. Emily reached for my hand, and for the first time in months, I didn't pull away. "Thank you for giving us a chance, Jason," she said softly. I squeezed her hand, feeling a flicker of hope. "It's going to take time, Emily. But if you're willing to put in the work, so am I. As we sat there side by side, I realized that while the road ahead was uncertain, it was one we were willing to walk together. It wouldn't be easy, and the scars of her betrayal would always be there, but maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal and move forward. Despite our attempts to rebuild, the betrayal lingered like a shadow over our relationship. Every time Emily's phone buzzed, or she came home a few minutes late, my mind raced with doubts. The trust we once had seemed impossible to regain, and the resentment simmered just below the surface. I struggled to reconcile my love for her with the anger and pain she had caused. One day, while browsing online, I stumbled upon a forum discussing infidelity. People shared their stories, and one recurring theme caught my eye: revenge. The idea of making Emily feel even a fraction of the pain she'd inflicted on me was tempting, intoxicating even. I knew it was petty and vindictive, but I couldn't shake the desire to get back at her. I devised a plan, one that would let her experience the same helplessness and betrayal I had felt. It was simple, yet brutal. I would stage my own affair. I didn't intend to actually cheat on her, but I wanted her to believe I had. I hoped it would shock her into truly understanding the depth of my hurt. I reconnected with an old friend from college, Sarah, who had recently moved back to town. We had always been close, and I knew I could trust her with my plan. When I explained everything to her, she was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed to help. We met a few times in public places, making sure to be seen together, and I started leaving subtle hints for Emily to find. It didn't take long for her to notice. One evening, as I was heading out to meet Sarah, Emily confronted me. "Where are you going, Jason?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "Just out for a drink with an old friend," I replied casually, grabbing my jacket. "Sarah, right? You've been seeing a lot of her lately," she said, her eyes narrowing. I shrugged. "Yeah, we've been catching up. Why? Is there a problem?" She looked taken aback by my nonchalance. "No, it's just, you've been spending a lot of time with her. I thought we were working on us." "We are," I said, my tone icy. "But I need my own space too, Emily. You can't expect everything to go back to normal just like that." Her face fell, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. It mirrored the pain I had felt when I discovered her affair. "Okay, I understand. Just don't be too late." As I walked out the door, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. She was starting to feel the sting of uncertainty and mistrust, and it was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I continued to meet with Sarah, always making sure to leave clues for Emily. I left my phone unattended with text messages from Sarah visible, mentioning how much fun we had and how good it was to see each other. I knew Emily would check my phone when I wasn't around, just as I had checked hers. The tension in our home reached a boiling point. Emily became increasingly anxious and withdrawn, clearly struggling with the fear that I was cheating on her. I could see the guilt and regret in her eyes, but I was too consumed by my own need for revenge to care. Finally, one night, it all came to a head. I came home late, reeking of alcohol, and found Emily waiting for me in the living room. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Jason, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. "Okay, what's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. "Are you having an affair with Sarah?" I looked at her, letting the silence stretch out, watching her squirm. "What if I am?" I said finally, my voice cold and detached. She burst into tears, her body shaking with sobs. "Please, Jason, don't do this. I know I messed up, but we were supposed to be working on our marriage. I can't lose you." Seeing her like this, so broken and desperate, I felt a pang of guilt. But the anger was still there, fueling my resolve. "How does it feel, Emily? How does it feel to be the one left in the dark, wondering if the person you love is betraying you?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with anguish. "It's horrible, Jason. I wouldn't wish this feeling on anyone. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. Please, let's not do this to each other." Her apology hit me hard, chipping away at the walls I had built around my heart. I realized that while my plan had succeeded in making her feel my pain, it had also deepened the chasm between us. I had become someone I didn't recognize, driven by revenge instead of love. I sat down beside her, my anger finally giving way to exhaustion. "Emily, I never actually cheated on you. I wanted you to feel what I felt, to understand the depth of my hurt. But now I see that this isn't the way to fix things. We're just tearing each other apart. She stared at me, her expression a mix of relief and sorrow. Jason, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you and I want to make this work. But we can't keep doing this to each other. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of our actions hanging heavy in the air. Finally, I spoke. I think we need to take a break, Emily. Some time apart to figure out what we really want, and if we can ever rebuild what we had. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Maybe some time apart will help us heal. We decided that I would move out for a while, giving us both space to think and reflect. It was a painful decision, but it felt necessary. As I packed my bags, I felt a sense of sadness and loss, but also a glimmer of hope. Maybe, with time and distance, we could find a way to heal and rebuild our marriage. As I closed the door behind me, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months lift slightly. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was one I was willing to walk, for the sake of my own sanity and for the possibility of a better future. The first few days after moving out were surreal. I stayed at a friend's place, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. The anger and pain were still there, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I had space to breathe and think clearly. I decided to consult a lawyer to understand my options. I needed to know what a separation or divorce would look like, both for me and for our children. My lawyer, Angela, was empathetic yet straightforward. She laid out the legal aspects and what I could expect in terms of custody, finances, and the division of assets. Jason, I understand this is a difficult time, she said, but it's important to approach this methodically. Whether you choose separation or divorce, we need to ensure that you and your children's interests are protected. We discussed various scenarios, and Angela advised me to document everything related to the affair and any communication with Emily. This isn't just about punishment. It's about creating a clear, factual record that can support your case if it goes to court, she explained. I started to keep a journal, detailing my interactions with Emily and my thoughts and feelings. It was cathartic, helping me process the turmoil inside. Emily and I continued to communicate, mostly about the kids and practical matters. The conversations were civil but strained, a stark contrast to the intimacy we once shared. One afternoon, Emily called, asking if we could meet to talk about the next steps. I agreed, and we chose a neutral location, a quiet park where we used to take the kids. As we sat on a bench, Emily looked tired and worn. Jason, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to make things right, but I understand if you don't want to try anymore. I just need to know what you're thinking. I sighed, looking at the playground where Josh and Lily used to play. Emily, I don't know if we can fix this. The trust is gone, and it's going to take a lot of work to rebuild it. But for the sake of the kids, I think we should try to handle this as amicably as possible. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I agree. The kids deserve better than to see us fighting all the time. If you want a separation, I understand. I just hope we can find a way to co-parent without too much conflict. We discussed a temporary separation, agreeing to split custody of Josh and Lily evenly. We would try to keep their routines as stable as possible, with minimal disruption to their lives. Emily agreed to attend counseling, both individually and together, to address her issues and our relationship. I moved into a small apartment nearby, making sure it was close enough to the kids' school and our house. It was a modest place, but it felt like a new beginning. I focused on creating a comfortable space for the kids when they stayed with me, making sure they felt at home despite the changes. The weeks turned into months, and Emily and I attended counseling sessions regularly. Dr. Stevens, our counselor, helped us navigate the complicated emotions and communication barriers. Emily was sincere in her efforts, and I could see she was genuinely remorseful. She was doing everything she could to make amends, but the wounds were still fresh. One evening, after a particularly tough session, Dr. Stevens suggested we take a break from the joint sessions to focus on individual therapy. You both need to work on yourselves before you can effectively work on your relationship, she said. I continued my sessions, delving deeper into my feelings of betrayal and anger. I learned a lot about myself, about my tendency to bury my emotions under a veneer of control and responsibility. It was a painful but necessary journey. During this time, I also spent as much quality time with Josh and Lily as I could. We had movie nights, played games, and took trips to the zoo. I wanted them to know that no matter what happened between their mother and me, they were loved and valued. Emily and I communicated more openly about the kids, coordinating schedules and sharing updates. The tension began to ease, and we found a tentative rhythm in our new arrangement. Then, one day, Emily called with unexpected news. "Jason, I've been offered a promotion at work, but it involves relocating to a different city. I know this complicates things, but I wanted to discuss it with you before making any decisions." The news hit me like a ton of bricks. The thought of her moving away with the kids was almost unbearable. "Emily, this is a huge decision. We need to think about how this will affect the kids and our custody arrangement." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "That's why I wanted to talk to you first. I don't want to make things harder for everyone, but this is a big opportunity. We agreed to meet with our lawyers to discuss the potential impact of the move." Angela was firm in her stance, advocating for a plan that would ensure I maintained a significant presence in Josh and Lily's lives. We explored options like extended holiday visits and video calls, but the uncertainty was overwhelming. In the end, Emily decided to decline the promotion. "I can't uproot the kids right now," she said. "It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to you. We need to focus on healing as a family, even if we're not together." Her decision brought a wave of relief, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to move forward, not as the couple we once were, but as co-parents committed to raising our children with love and respect. The legal aspects of our separation were finalized, with clear guidelines for custody and support. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was a start. As I signed the final papers, I felt a sense of closure, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Emily and I continued to work on ourselves and our roles as parents. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we were both committed to doing our best for Josh and Lily. In the end, that was all that mattered. Months passed, and the raw pain of Emily's betrayal began to dull, replaced by a cautious sense of acceptance and a determination to rebuild my life. The separation had given us both space to heal individually, and the time spent in counseling helped me process my emotions more healthily. The arrangement we had for Josh and Lily was working well. They adapted to the new routine with surprising resilience, and I made sure that their time with me was filled with love and stability. Emily and I were on better terms now, able to communicate without the bitterness that had once tainted every interaction. We were learning to co-parent effectively, prioritizing our children's well-being above all else. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat on the couch, reflecting on how far we had come. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. I had found solace in small rituals, cooking dinner, reading bedtime stories, and even tackling household chores. These moments grounded me, helping me find a sense of normalcy. It was during one of these quiet evenings that I received a message from an old friend, Jessica. We had known each other since college but lost touch over the years. She had seen some of my updates on social media and reached out to see how I was doing. We exchanged a few messages, catching up on each other's lives. Jessica had gone through her own share of struggles, including a recent divorce. We bonded over our shared experiences, and our conversations became a regular part of my evenings. It was refreshing to talk to someone who understood the complexities of rebuilding life after a significant loss. One weekend, Jessica suggested we meet up for coffee. I was hesitant at first, unsure if I was ready to take that step, but her warmth and understanding made me agree. We met at a cozy cafe downtown, and from the moment we sat down, the conversation flowed effortlessly. There was a comfort in her presence, a sense of familiarity that felt like coming home. As we sipped our coffee and shared stories, I found myself laughing genuinely for the first time in months. Jessica was a reminder that life could be beautiful again, that connections could be meaningful even after heartbreak. We talked about everything, our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. The more we talked, the more I realized how much I had missed this kind of connection. We began seeing each other regularly, taking things slow. There was no rush, no pressure. We both understood the importance of healing and moving forward at our own pace. Jessica met Josh and Lily a few times, and they took to her instantly. She was kind and patient, never trying to overstep, but always ready to lend a helping hand. Emily, too, noticed the positive changes in me. One evening, when she came to pick up the kids, she pulled me aside. "I'm glad you're doing better, Jason," she said, a genuine smile on her face. "You deserve to be happy." "Thank you, Emily," I replied, feeling a sense of closure. "I hope you find happiness, too." As the months turned into a year, Jessica and I grew closer. Our bond deepened, not just because of our shared past, but because of the future we were building together. She became a constant presence in my life, a source of joy and stability. We celebrated milestones together, birthdays, holidays, and simple everyday moments that made life rich and fulfilling. Emily and I maintained a respectful co-parenting relationship. There were still challenges, but we faced them with a newfound sense of cooperation and understanding. The kids were thriving, surrounded by love from both sides, and that was all that mattered. One sunny afternoon, as Jessica and I walked hand in hand through the park, watching Josh and Lily play, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been painful and tumultuous, but it had led me to a place of peace and happiness I never thought I would find again. "Thank you for being here," I said, squeezing her hand gently. She smiled up at me, her eyes filled with warmth. "I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." As I looked at the life we were creating, I realized that while the past had left its scars, it had also opened up new possibilities. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and to believe in the future. The betrayal that had once shattered my world had ultimately led me to a new beginning, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of better days. And for that, I was eternally grateful.